Good afternoon, everyone. It's David Schlotthauer here with another detailed tropical weather outlook and discussion on Invest 98L for Saturday, August the 10th, 2024. So here's a look at the latest GOES 16 True Color Visible Satellite imagery here from Dr. Levi Cowan at tropicaltidbits.com. Actually, this image is slightly delayed. There are some issues with satellite imagery that NOAA is retrieving, but nevertheless, this is as current of an image that we could actually get here. And what it does show is we do have that tropical wave that is gradually becoming better organized here. This is now located about 40 degrees west in longitude, and it does continue to generally move in this general direction towards the west-northwest, towards the northern Windward Islands, Greater Antilles over the next 3 days. When we zoom in and take a look at this wave envelope a little bit closer, we can see that it is showing signs of organization in the fact that we have more organized deep convection. You can see some of these feathery cirrus kind of animating outward here. So we're developing or beginning to develop some outflow gradually with this system. And when we look at the surface observations here on the low-level cloud cover, look, we can see that the flow is beginning to come out of the southwest a little bit. We have northeasterly winds here. So there is a wave pocket in here that is gradually organizing and getting gradually sharper. And as this sharpens up a little more, this is going to generally move in this general direction towards these Windward Islands. How close will it get to the Windward Islands will be very dependent on how quick this organizes and strengthens. This is the latest outlook from the National Hurricane Center, 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook. And they have now a high chance that this tropical wave will develop into a tropical depression or tropical storm as it continues to move off towards the west-northwest at about 10 to 20 miles an hour. And any interests living on these islands, the Greater Antilles, some of the Lesser Antilles like say Guadeloupe, the U.S. British Virgin Islands, Antigua, you definitely need to be monitoring this. Heavy rainfall, gusty winds, elevated to high surf are also expected, and some of this could lead to some flood concerns, even if this is just a tropical wave or a tropical depression. So keep that in mind if you're doing any vacationing, if you're headed down to these islands, keep that in mind. May not be the best time to go since this tropical wave is going to be closing in on these islands within the next 3 to 5 days. So now the question really remains, when and where will this close off a surface low and its determining trajectory based on everything that I'm about to mention. So this look at the latest European deterministic forecast showing us the wave envelope. At this point, it is not closed. We have southerly winds over here. We have northeasterly winds over here, over these islands. So this is not a closed surface wave at the moment in the next 60 hours, but some other models are saying otherwise, that this could close up a little sooner, which will really be important on where this heads. So on the European model here, you can see it's sharpening, but it's not closed, and it would still be a tropical wave and not a depression. As we go into Tuesday morning, August the 13th here, it approaches Antigua, Guadeloupe, some of these other islands like the U.S., British Virgin Islands, as still a wave that does not close up here on the European model, which is quite incredible. Even so, we have southwesterly winds here. We have northeasterly winds here. So there is no northwesterly winds on this side of the wave, which would otherwise allow this to become a tropical depression, as a tropical depression is declared when a wave has a well-developed circulation and it's closed, not open. Now, when we go into August the 14th here, we can see eventually as this crawls or moves, not very fast or slow, but moves across these islands of the British Virgin Islands in the Greater Antilles, the wave does become organized enough to close off a low, especially when you look at this. Not much tropical storm force winds on the southwestern side, but there is northwesterly winds here. So instead of having a wave pocket like this, the wave actually closes off and we get a complete circulation, a circuit of that developing, with most of the strongest winds removed to the northeast of this wave or this tropical depression at this moment, with winds maybe about 30 miles an hour. Continuing to go forward here, once this moves away from Puerto Rico, this could get significantly stronger, perhaps reaching tropical storm intensity in about 4 days. And then by day 5, this becomes a stronger tropical storm, but moves out into the middle of the Atlantic, similar to Lee. And then it could still impact, say, Bermuda, which we don't want to ignore here on this video. And then, of course, you can see there possibly becoming a high-end tropical storm or a low-grade hurricane. But the unfortunate thing about this is the more generous, the best case scenario. I should say it's not really the best because you're still going to get impacts down here. But as far as a U.S. landfall, not going to likely happen in this scenario because the system strengthens a little sooner and it gains latitude a little sooner and turns out to sea since it's going to find that weakness in the ridge. Now, when we look at the GFS, let's go to rainfall after that. So looking at the GFS, there's a different scenario here. So remember on the Euro, we had an open wave at 60 hours here. Now on the GFS model, it is still somewhat an open wave, but the wind max to the north is a lot stronger. Usually means that this is not going to have as hard of a time closing off with winds that are that strong. This would be a 50-knot system. That's pretty incredible to say the least. And as this goes further west, doesn't gain a whole lot of latitude. And the GFS has been consistent here, showing this general scenario. If we look at the last few model runs, the GFS indicates that the wave is going to be here, somewhere in Guadeloupe. Martinique and Dominica are all down here, and you can see that. In fact, if we're able to closely zoom in here, Lesser Antilles, we can see the difference. There's a GFS 18Z run yesterday, and here's a look at the 12Z run this morning, showing us that the wave is going to be somewhere in this area, which is remarkable. The GFS has done pretty good this year at indicating where these systems actually go, with its new model upgrade a few months ago really kind of ironed out and fixed some of the wrinkles in its deterministic forecast. So we're going to have to watch this to see if the euro trends southward to the GFS, or the GFS trends northward to the euro. But it is noteworthy here that this could have some pretty strong tropical storm force winds as it moves across the island. And then once it gets into the northeastern Caribbean, this would be day 4. This would be Wednesday morning, August the 14th. Then it could intensify a little bit more significantly. Given the compact nature here, it wouldn't surprise me at all to seeing a hurricane here just south of Puerto Rico. And then the question is, will it just go continuously west and then turn north later, or say turn or gain latitude a little quicker and then turn north a lot earlier and miss the U.S.? We really don't know yet, and we will show you the ensembles here in a little bit. But as this runs into the Dominican Republic here, Haiti, the Haitian Peninsula, the circulation will likely get disrupted to some extent as it moves over these tall mountains. Of course, circulations do not like tall mountains. The friction, induced friction to the wind field really kind of sputters down the system a little bit. But once the system reemerges out away from the Dominican Republic over to Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas, then it could strengthen a little bit more quicker. But the question here is, will it come really close to the U.S., or will it just kind of do this? There, again, is a lot of uncertainty here. And as we go out to day 7, I'm not going any further beyond day 7 for many reasons. I did go a little further out on the euro. I shouldn't have. I do apologize by that. But on the GFS, we're going to hold it at 7 days because there is a lot of room of variability here in this forecast. In such a way, if we go and look at the 06Z run, we can see it was a little further east. If we go to the 0Z run, it was a little weaker and further west. And if we go to the 18Z run, it's kind of back and forth. So we really don't know yet where this is going to end up, because the general idea here is if the system remains weak and shallow, remember, when a system rapidly intensifies or quickly strengthens, it wants to gain latitude and move more poleward. Versus if a system struggles to intensify like Laura did. Remember, we thought maybe Laura's going to kind of turn maybe over Florida or maybe just to the east. Instead, it made its way into Louisiana. And that is because the system was not able to intensify. And so therefore, it just kind of hung around here for a while over these islands. It went further west than expectations. So this is one, a graveyard for systems, and two, this is the most uncertainty point for most systems, because if they fail to strengthen, they go further west, versus if they intensify, they could go further east. So now about the rainfall with this system. On the ensemble forecast from the Euro, all 51 members do indicate on an average that there's going to be anywhere between about 2 to 3 inches of rainfall over Puerto Rico, the British U.S. Virgin Islands, if you're on Guadeloupe over here, if you're on Martinique and Dominica down here, just keep that in mind. You could see some flooding, some high surf, and some problems. Even so, this is not a tropical storm or a tropical depression. It's really not going to matter because there's a lot of convection with this already, and it's a very organized wave pocket, and a lot of the nasty weather, rain, wind, and impacts will be felt to the north of the circulation. Now, areas down here towards Trinidad and Tobago and even Barbados, some questions coming in about that. You're likely to only see anywhere between about 3/4 of an inch to maybe 1.5 inches of rainfall. There's no way this is going to get very far south, and this is likely to gain latitude at some degree. So areas up here in Puerto Rico definitely need to be on the lookout for this system, as this could strengthen a little sooner or later, just depending on how this all evolves. So now this next question is, what about the surf? I don't show this very much in my videos, and I want to start implementing this in my videos. So the surf forecast goes like this, with the Euro indicating that this is not going to be as strong as what the GFS model. This could be a little generous, with surf up to about 8 to 10 feet or so. Some of these oranger colors indicate surf up to maybe 12 or so feet. So if you're surfing out here, it's not a good idea. There's going to be a lot of rain, wind, and lots of high breakers. So consider not going to the beach at all for early next week, Monday, Tuesday, and even on Wednesday until the storm passes, because the surf is going to definitely be a problem with this system. And then, of course, once this goes north, when it does, or if it does, surf will emanate from this. So even so, this is a fish storm, folks. You're going to have surf along the Georgia coast, the Florida coast, I should say, for our Floridian viewers that live over here. Also, the Carolina coast, you might see surf up to about 5 to 8 feet or so. So keep that in mind. Just because it's a fish storm does not mean you ignore impact. Now the question will remain, what do the hurricane models indicate with this system? What is the ceiling on this once it, or right before it hits the leeward and windward islands? Well, right now, if we look at the HWRF model, this is a hurricane-specific trained model. So this is a convective allowing model specifically for hurricanes. This is not your global model. This is not your NAM 3-kilometer model or our CAMS guidance for the United States. In fact, this is just for hurricanes. And so what we have here is we do have a more organized system, certainly a closed surface flow with winds here at tropical storm intensity. We will see how this all evolves. If we look at the 06Z run, it was a little weaker right where that GFS has it. So that is to be concerned about. The 12Z run has this a lot further north. So you can see even some differences in the model versus the 06Z down here and the 12Z run on the HWRF, definitely a lot further north. When we look at another model, the HMOD model, this is even much further north, like where the Euro has it and what the Canadian model has it, with winds of about 65 miles an hour. So there is even a lot of uncertainty in the hurricane models of this update. And that's why we cannot speculate that, this is going to hit the Dominican Republic. Oh, this is going to miss the islands. Good. It's going to be like Lee. We don't need to worry about it. That is probably a very bad thing to do when considering that this does not possess a closed surface flow at all. Until that happens, we're going to see a lot of wrinkles in the forecast. Either this goes further south or further north. All right, so anyone living on these islands, you need to be prepared for rapid changes to the forecast. But either way, this gets close to the islands, nevertheless, with tropical storm force winds here, with winds 40 to 50 miles an hour. And this is a hurricane on the HWRF with winds of about 75 miles an hour. And then as it moves generally towards the northwest here, it could strengthen a little further and possibly impact Bermuda later on in the forecast, but this only goes out to 5 days for a reason. But a mighty tropical storm here with winds of at least 40 to 60 miles an hour, with some winds in here that are at least 75 miles an hour. Looking at the latest spaghetti plot from our hurricane-specific models here, we can see there is that uncertainty as we just talked about. Again, look at the red line here. This goes really far west. This is the AVNI model. This is more likely that GFS model that we looked at. And then when we look at our other models, again, still impacting these islands. So if someone says, oh, this is the fish storm, whatever, David, it's going to be a fish storm, you watch. Again, you can speculate all you want and predict that this is going to be a fish storm, but we really need to rely on our model guidance. And there is enough convention here amongst the GFS and its ensembles indicating that there is going to be impacts to these islands. Regardless if this is a tropical storm or not, or if it's a hurricane or not, there's going to be rain, wind, flooding, and some surf with this, okay? If this goes further west, we will cross that bridge if it does, versus if it goes further north, we'll get to that point when it happens, but until it happens, we just don't know. But I'll tell you, Bermuda right here needs to be watching this too. When this turn to the north, if it occurs, when it occurs, will be important. So now there's a high ceiling on this system. How strong can 98L become? Which would be, again, Tropical Storm Hurricane Ernesto. We're probably going to go ahead and pre-name this because we're very confident that this is going to be at least a named storm of some degree. So when we're looking at the 12Z guidance here on our hurricane-specific intensity guidance, or our SHIPS guidance, we should say, Statistical Hurricane Intensity Prediction System, or scheme of things, we can see in the next 2 days, we could see a low-grade tropical storm, and then in the next 5 days, we could have a high-end tropical storm, or if not, a Category 4 hurricane. That is a dramatic spread in the intensity guidance, showing us that there's a lot of uncertainty. Therefore, my black line that I'm drawing up, okay, I'm going to draw this up so you all can see this. My black line here illustrates my intensity forecast. And so right now, I do expect this to become a tropical storm and then continuously intensifying to a low-grade hurricane in about 5 days with winds up to about 75 miles an hour. Some other YouTubers might predict this to become a major hurricane right now. That is way too soon to call. We're not going to get that far ahead of ourselves with that. And right now, I'm keeping this more in the generous and down the middle of the intensity guidance at indicating a high-end tropical storm 70 miles an hour to a low-grade hurricane with winds of 75 miles an hour. So now, why is this going to turn north? Well, actually, after we look at our spaghetti plot, we'll get to the GFS steering flow here in a second. So when we look at our spaghetti plot on the Euro, we can see over the next, say, 5 days, this is where this system is going to be. It is, again, very important to note that there is still some spread here. So we can still see, theoretically, a landfall in Haiti, or in the Haitian Peninsula of the Dominican Republic. Or we could theoretically see this system miss the islands altogether. So that's why we use ensemble member systems like this to give us a range of possible outcomes. Does this turn north too soon? Does this drift further west more than expected? That's why we use this. And so until we get a more convergence in these ensemble members, it's going to be very hard to make a actual accurate prediction who, where, and when these impacts will be. Okay, so that's a day 5 forecast. When you go out to day 7, this is the 7th day right here. You can see still some members here theoretically getting very close to Florida, while the majority of the members are still offshore over the Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos Islands at a moderate to strong tropical storm. And then by day 8, that is, we can see that the system, theoretically, yeah, some of these members do bring it very close to Florida. So this is not a done deal. Just because you see a deterministic model on the euro being consistent that, oh, it's not going to even hit us. Which, by the way, the euro, if we go back to the euro model, okay, and we play this through, you got to look at where this is on the model. And then we go back and look at this in the 10-day forecast, actually a 9-day forecast. The euro deterministic forecast is way over here on the furthest east of the envelope of uncertainties. So that is incredible. That's important. While we have the westerly output here too. This is a very uncertain forecast. In other words, we are not sure. People are I'm sure I'm gonna get comments in this video saying, David, stop hyping this up. It's not gonna make landfall. It's going to be a fish storm. I understand that. I understand your prediction, and I'm not saying your prediction's right or wrong, but we can't call it too soon because, again, until a possession of a surface low develops, where this is going to be will be very important. We will look at this up here later on in forecast to see if this narrows down somewhere. But right now, if you're in Florida, I would keep an eye on it. If you're in the Carolinas and Georgia, I would keep an eye on it. If you're in the northeast coast here of the U.S., I would keep an eye on it too. And if you're in Bermuda, I would definitely keep an eye on it. And of course, if you're in the Turks and Caicos Islands, Great Abaco, in the Bahamas, also monitor this closely. So when we look at the steering flow forecast on the GFS 500 millibar upper level air chart here, we can see that the system is going to be generally moving westward to even towards the west-northwest by this mid-level ridge that is over here to the north of the system. Now, it's still north of the system, so it's guiding this system generally westward. But what ends up happening here is there is this trough, this long wave trough over the northeastern U.S. So there is a weakness here in the ridge forecast on this model, but also you can see another ridge outlined here with these wind barbs. See how these winds are coming in out of the north and they're coming in out of the south here. So there's a little bit of a weak ridge here, not particularly strong or weak. It's weaker than the ridge to its northeast at this point in the 48-hour forecast, but it's going to be very important because if the vortex here is shallower, remember, the deeper the vortex, it's going to follow or feel the net weight of the steering flow in the atmosphere versus a shallower vortex is going to generally feel the lower half of the atmosphere, usually at 850, 700 millibars above the surface, or about, say, 5 to 10,000 feet. Okay, and so when we go forward here, we can see that the system here, if it's weaker, again, that's the whole key point here. If the system is weaker than what the GFS model is at this forecast point, this is a 90-hour forecast. The trough is over here. We have this ridge that is outlined here. So we are still getting northeasterly and easterly flow imposing on the vortex. That's why the system here still moves westward despite strengthening. But if it ends up weaker here south of Puerto Rico, it is possible this could get a little further to the west before it makes that turn to the north. And we can see that here. If we go and look at the 5-day forecast, you can see that the system eventually does end up turning because this trough here digs far enough south to at least erode this ridge to its north. So the western flank of this ridge to its east gets eroded by this trough, and then this ridge over the Gulf of Mexico gets eroded because of this trough as well. But this trough too could change with amplitude. If we look at prior model runs, you can see that this trough is well modeled here, but just a few model runs ago, it was a lot weaker, and now it's a little stronger at 5 days. So it's going to be important to know where and how strong this ridge is going to be once this system approaches here, and how weak, slow, or fast 98L is going to be here at this point. But in general, most of the model thinking here is this trough to the northeast will exist. So this is going to keep this lane open of traffic for this system to turn generally northward over the western Atlantic. Okay, and so at the end of the run, if we go and look at, actually, we're not going to go much further than that. This is 7 days. We can see this trough is going to impinge on this system, and this system is going to be able to go freely northward. But again, still not as far east as the Euro shows, as you can see. The system is far enough west to Bermuda, but the fat side, the windy side, could impact Bermuda quite significantly with some strong winds, maybe some tropical storm force winds, if that. But again, very uncertain with this forecast. So with that being said, anyone living over the greater Antilles, the northern windward islands here, such as you're on, say, Martinique, Dominica, if you're on Guadeloupe, as well as the U.S. British Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, including Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and maybe even Jamaica should be on the lookout for this. Because again, this now has a high chance of tropical development in the next 7 days, a medium chance in the next 2 days, as this generally moves towards the west-northwest at about 15 to 20 miles an hour. All users on these islands definitely need to be monitoring the progress of this system. And due to the fact that this is evolving rather quickly, please stay tuned to my Google Calendars, as I do have my schedule out for this week on this system, which is important for you all to check out, so you all know what my plans are, so you don't miss an update. But also, you don't need to miss an update only if you do subscribe to the channel. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, share this video with your family and friends on social media. My yesterday's video got out to almost 25,000 people, so I want to thank you all for sharing that and liking it. Keep up the great work, and I will keep up the great work on my end as well. But thank you all for watching. I'll be back with you more tomorrow.